Hello and welcome to Bread Theory. I'm Zach, your host, and tonight we are going to continue our journey into Alexander Berkman's uh, What is Communist Anarchism, which has been published under several titles, including The ABC of Anarchy, as well as some other lesser known ones. But we're going to go into chapter 2 tonight. But before we get started, just want to give one more plug for the Lefties Award show that my Facebook group Left Signal Boost is putting on. It's going to be on this channel that the award show is. Um, we'll be hosting it right here on Black Friday, actually, the day after Thanksgiving, or after U.S. Thanksgiving, at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. But right now, voting is open, and I had just put it into the comments. I'm going to put it up. Oh, yeah, it's still up there now. So, yeah, if you follow that link right there, that bit.ly/second, that's 2ND lefties, it will take you to the ballot, and you can vote for all of your favorite lefties from 2021 and all their content that they created in the last year. So it should be a fun time, the award show. The purpose is really just to kind of celebrate and expose people to more quality leftist content, especially if you're used to, maybe just YouTube or Twitch or just one platform. This will give you some ideas or some more creators to explore in other mediums on other platforms. So it should be a lot of fun, but it's entirely an of the people award show. So all the nominations were done by members of Left Signal Boost, and now voting is open to absolutely everybody. It's pretty simple. Just follow that link, and then you fill out the form, and it gets counted. And there's even write-ins for each category, just in case you don't see your favorite, artist or creation. You can always write it in as well. All right. Well, I think we're going to move on to the chapter tonight. So this is What is Communist Anarchism? And the chapter is called The Wage System. It's chapter 2. So last time we got some basic thought experiments about what anarchy is, and just kind of easing us into the idea that perhaps there's more systems that closely resemble anarchy in your life than you're even aware of. Let's go ahead and put that in there. And open it up like that. And bring it back on screen. All right, so the channel that I'm using for the audiobook is Audible Anarchist. Pump up the volume again too. They have some great stuff. It's all these anarchist authors. They put their entire audiobooks up there, just read by volunteers. It's a really great service that you should really check out. It's on YouTube, also on LibriVox. It's just really cool. Let's get into the chapter here.
This audio production was made in collaboration with Audible Anarchist.
And as always, as you have questions,
Chapter 2,
feel free to shout them out
system.
or comments
Did you
you want
ever
to make.
stop to ask yourself this question? Why were you born from your parents and not from some others? You understand, of course, what I'm driving at. I mean that
Good
your
evening,
consent
wasted
was
youth.
not asked.
How are you tonight?
You were simply born. You did not have a chance to select your place of birth or to choose your parents. It was just chance. So it happened that you were not born rich. Maybe your people are of the middle class. More likely, though, they belong to the workers, and so you are one of those millions, the masses, who have to work for a living. The man who has money can put it into some businesses or industry. He invests it and lives on the profits.
Nice.
But you have no money. You have only your ability to work, your labor power. There was a time when every working man worked for himself. There were no factories then, and no big industries. The laborer had his own tools and had his own little workshop, and he even bought the raw materials he needed. He worked for himself, and he was called an artisan or a craftsman. Then
So this is the, I guess, the original form of capitalism that he's describing, where you have an artisan who um, just has basically one craft, just take like blacksmithing or something like that. And then they'll have apprentices that they take on and eventually become journeymen. And the idea being that if you put in enough work and years into your particular business, that the owner will eventually sell to you or give you enough money to start your own practice. So this was taken over by what we have today, which is the more corporate form of capitalism, where there's no people switch jobs all the time. There's no contract really between the employer and the employee to ever have any grand payoff at the end of it. You work for your company, and I guess scrape by and survive, or do your best to move up. So yeah.
came the factory and the large workshop. Little by little, they crowded out the independent working man, the artisan, because he could not make things as cheaply as the factory. He could not compete with the big manufacturer, so the artisan had to give up his little workshop and go to the factory to work.
Mhm.
In the factories and large plants, things are produced on a big scale. Such big scale production.
And hello to you, Bree the Bumblebee. That's a fun name. We're listening to What is Communist Anarchism tonight. So if you have any thoughts on that, feel free to put them in the chat there.
Production is called industrialism. It has made the employers and manufacturers very rich, so that the lords of industry and commerce have accumulated much money, much capital. Therefore, that system is called capitalism. We all live today in the capitalist system. In the capitalist system, the working man cannot work for himself, as in the old days. He cannot compete with the big manufacturers. So if you're a working man, you must find an employer. You work for him, that is, you give him your labor for so and so many hours per week or day, and he pays you for it. You sell him your labor power, and he pays you wages.
So I mean that's okay if you're just learning about this stuff for the first time, Bree. This is definitely a space. And this is definitely the right text for someone who's looking for an introduction. This is what a lot of people cite as the most influential introductory text when they choose anarchism as their kind of guiding star. So you can definitely contribute your questions. If anything doesn't make sense to you, or you're just struggling with the concept or whatever, just feel free to say so, and I'll do my best to try and help you with it.
In the capitalist system, the whole working class sells its labor power to the employing class. Workers build factories, make machinery and tools, and produce goods. The employers keep the factories, the machinery, tools, and goods for themselves as their profit. The workers get only wages.
Yeah. So the machinery, the factory itself, these are what's known as the means of production. You may have heard that term before. So it's the way to make a business, basically. So it's anything that's not just for your personal survival. Anarchists like to say that they're not after your toothbrush, and what that means is your toothbrush would be a personal item. That's different from private property. But the means of production, the means of making a business, that is all private property. So there's personal property and there's private property, and it's important to make that distinction. No, you're an anarcho-communist as well. That tends to be the I guess flavor, if you will, of communism or of anarchy that I fall into. most of all, I think Peter Kropotkin has been my biggest influence so far, the one that I've jived with the best. So welcome. I'm glad you're here.
This arrangement is called the wage system. Learned men have figured out that the worker receives as his wage only about 1/10 of what he produces. The other 9/10 are divided amongst the landlord, the manufacturer, the railroad company, the wholesaler, the jobber, and other middlemen. It means this: though the workers as a class have built the factories, a slice of their daily labor is taken from them for the privilege of using those factories. That's the landlord's profit. Though the workers have made the tools and the machinery, another slice of their daily labor is taken from them for the privilege of using those tools and machinery. That's the manufacturer's profit.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever wondered where the money comes from to maintain the machinery or technology at your place of work? I mean, it has to come from somewhere. Someone has to produce something, whether it's a good or a service, in order to get the money to keep the computers going, the lights on, to pay the rent, all that stuff. That's got to come from somebody's effort. So that's going to be the effort of the workers themselves. And owners can be workers as well. Owners can both be owners and workers, but they're the ones who are deciding where all that stuff, where all the money that comes in, and how that gets distributed and reallocated. So, in a sense, you are working to keep your business going, whether or not you own that business. And especially if you don't own that business, you are working to keep someone else's business going. So part of your efforts go for that. So
Though the workers have built the railroads and are running them, another slice of their daily labor is taken from them for transportation of the goods they make. That's the railroad's profit. And so on, including the banker who lends the manufacturer other people's money, the wholesaler, the jobber, and other middlemen, all of whom get their slice of the worker's toil. What is left then? 1/10 of the worker's real labor, his share, his wage. Can you guess now why the wise Proudhon said the possessions of the rich are stolen property? Stolen from the producer, the worker. It seems strange, doesn't it, that such a thing should be permitted? Yes.
And it's true also in the case of rent. No matter if you rent or you own, you are paying a mortgage. You just may not be paying your own mortgage. In order for a rental to be profitable, of course, for it to be worthwhile for the landlord, they have to charge a higher rate than they pay for every unit towards the mortgage, because likely they are paying on that property as well. So that just gets transferred onto you as well as the renter, and you get none of the equity from it. It's not as though once you move out, then the landlord pays you all of the mortgage payments that you've made for them over the course of the years. So yeah, that's it's the same situation. It's owners are not really any different than landlords. They're all just rent seeking. They have a resource that you need, whether that be a job or a place to live, and they are hoarding it for themselves to create an artificial scarcity so that you have to go to them in order to get it. And then they will use that position to make you pay for their stuff, basically. Same things with your job. If you leave your job, it's not as though you get back all that money that you that your efforts went to paying for things like computers or whatever the machinery of the job requires. The owner keeps that equity that you have built for them. So two situations that are basically the same.
indeed, it is very strange. And the strangest thing of all is that the whole world looks on and doesn't do a thing about it. Worse yet, the workers themselves don't do anything about it. Why, most of them think that everything is all right and that the capitalist system is good. It is because the workers don't see what is happening to them. They don't understand that they're being robbed. The rest of the world also understands very little about it. And when some honest man tries to tell them, they shout "anarchist" at him and shut him up or
Jeez,
put him in
always
prison.
change my
Of course, the
characters.
capitalists are very satisfied with the capitalist system. Why shouldn't they be? They get rich by it, so you can't expect them to say it's no good. The middle classes are helpers of the capitalists, and they also live off the labor of the working class, so why should they object? Of course, here and there you will find some man or woman of the middle class stand up and speak the truth about the whole matter, but such persons are quickly silenced and cried down as enemies of the people, as crazy disturbers and anarchists. But you would think that the workers should be the first to object to the capitalist system, for it is they who are robbed and suffer most from it.
And so you can see just by his use of language that even back then, the term anarchist had been corrupted from its original meaning, which is anarchy, combination of an, which means without or none, and archy coming from hierarchy, so without hierarchy. That's what an anarchist is striving for, is more or less an evening out of power. Uh, but even back then, you can hear in the way he uses the word, you'll be called an anarchist. Uh, Even back then, it had been made synonymous with chaos and lack of order and just basically doing whatever you want at the expense of everybody else. And that's not at all what anarchism is about. Um, but just like communism, just like socialism, there's concerted efforts to taint these words and make them unpalatable to people, so that it's a very clever trick, because basically all you have to do is make it so it's so it'd be so I don't know, extremist, or uh, it would just be a word that you would not want to be associated with so much that anytime you hear it, it kind of just stops your brain from thinking beyond that point. You hear someone say a really good idea, and then they say, oh, by the way, I'm an anarchist, and it turns off your brain to that whole idea, just because of the bad associations that you have with it, um, that have been purposely put there to make you not think beyond the walls of capitalism. Make you submit to the idea that capitalism is the highest and best system that we can ever achieve, and that anything else is either unrealistic or the opposite of what those who want it claim. Um, and that's how we've gotten to things like, the idea that socialism is just the government doing things and owning things, uh, which that has nothing to do with socialism. Uh, that's not anybody's working definition of socialism who actually wants that. But that's the idea that the right especially has pushed. But even people that are, they claim to be on the left, um, but in in actuality they are serving capitalism just as well. But like the Democrats, they themselves are still by and large fans of capitalism, so they don't mind these terms being synonymous with bad things as well. They may go as far as to call themselves, a democratic socialist or a social democrat, but the implication that they're making is that they still want free enterprise and private ownership of the means of production. They're just fine with it. All right, well, let's move on a little bit more.
Yes, so it should be, but it isn't.
Oh, wait, we got a question first. So Bree says, I hear a lot that capitalism is best because it gives doctors and scientists to make new discoveries because of monetary incentives. I don't know if that's true or not, but can anarcho communism do something similar? Yeah, it absolutely can, for sure. Um, in fact, where do most discoveries come from? How is most research funded that then gets used for things like the iPhone or the Elon Musk's endeavors into space? How was all of that technology developed? You look at virtually any major technology, and it was funded by research universities by and large, and then also the military sometimes as well. And then eventually the capitalists figure out how to make a profit on it, and they come around to it and make it their own, more or less. They pretend that they've invented it when really they've taken 98% of the design off the shelf from the efforts of researchers who themselves don't make a single extra penny by doing their research. If you're working for a university, for one thing, that university most likely has the rights to all of your patents. So if you discover something new, you say you make a new drug, whatever research university you are a part of owns the rights to manufacturing that drug, and they can sell that to private industries as well. That's one way that universities fund themselves. So to say that we can't do it without profit motive, I mean, that at least is wrong. These research scientists may not even be paid all that well. They may not be paid more than average. And yet they continue on just for the love of discovery, the love of knowledge, the prestige of being part of something bigger than themselves. All these things are reasons that they do it that have nothing to do with money. So I think definitely we can do that without money. So yeah, definitely under anarcho-communism, you can still have innovation and development. And of course, capitalism hasn't always been around. And even today, there are plenty of countries that are not capitalist, and yet they still make innovations. Cuba, for example, came up with their an entirely unique COVID vaccine because the patents were not being shared with them, but they fund their universities very well, and they fund medicine very well. And so they managed to come up with their own COVID vaccine. That happened, I would say, outside of capitalism, because, I mean, them more than almost any other country, they are very isolated economically from the rest of the world by force, by the U.S. embargo. So there are very few other countries that they can trade with at all. And the ones they can oftentimes are very restricted in what they can trade with them. And yet they still have innovation. Excuse me. So yeah, I definitely think that would still happen. And the idea behind any sort of leftist philosophy, whether it's anarchism, socialism, communism, is to give everybody an equal footing, so that no matter where you're born, he was talking earlier in this chapter about, it's just an accident that you happen to be born into whatever family you were born into. You didn't have any choice in that. So why should there be, a difference in the outcome of your life? Well, that shouldn't make the difference, right? So any leftist philosophy is going to want to have everyone on a more or less equal footing, so that no matter how hard you work, no matter what your job is, no matter if you're able or willing to work, you still have food, you still have shelter, you still have medicine, transportation, all these sorts of things, these basic necessities of life. And that if you have that, then, excuse me, not only can you get by without having to scrape and barely scrape by with whatever wages you have, you can keep living no matter what. And then beyond that, you can now have a choice in your life about what you do with it. So say you just happen to be born into a poor family and there aren't many great jobs that are available to you once you get out of high school or whatever. Instead of just having to take the first thing that comes along, if you were provided with all of your basic necessities, you then have the choice of what to do with your life. So instead of wasting it, perhaps wasting your talent, maybe you're a great mathematician, but you just cannot find a good job through your connections, through just the luck of the draw. Maybe you would be an artist otherwise. But then you actually have the choice. So by giving everybody an equal footing, there's going to be a lot of people that otherwise never would have the chance to innovate or invent new things, that all of a sudden have a basis to do so. So I think actually capitalism right now stands in the way of a lot of innovation and a lot of advancements in art and people's ability to just care for one another as well. How many times have you wanted to spend time with family or friends more, but you have to go to a job? Wouldn't it be nice if at least sometimes you could make the choice to, do that, actually care for other people, strengthen those bonds without worrying that it's going to jeopardize your entire future and ability to survive? And that's what any leftist philosophy worth its salt is going to push, that you at least have that platform to stand on no matter what. Because the truth of it is, right now, we have way more than enough for everybody in the world. There's an overabundance of resources. There's an underabundance of it getting to all the people that need it, whether that's housing or food or whatever it is. We could provide for everybody with all that we produce right now, many times over, in fact. But we choose instead to have a system that rewards the few at the expense of everyone else. I hope that answers your question a little bit. I'm going to scroll back up and see just to make sure. But yeah, you think about the Soviet Union as well. They had plenty of innovation that took place, like the space race that they had with the United States. They sent the first animal into space. They had the first person in space, the first satellite. Many, many, many of the first. The only thing they didn't achieve was the first person on the moon. But still, you can see that you can have a lot of innovation without capitalism. The profit motive is kind of a farce when it comes to innovation anyway. You look at the people that are venerated today, like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, as these huge thinkers and creators and inventors and all that stuff. They didn't invent really anything. Elon Musk bought a bunch of patents. He also he bought PayPal and then sold it for a higher profit margin. Excuse me. And then he paid engineers to create, SpaceX and the Tesla and all these things that he gets credit for because he's the owner, so he can just take credit. Same thing with Bezos. It's not as though he designed any of the rockets components that he used to go up into space either. He had other people do that as well. It's not as though Amazon is all that big of an innovation as a concept. It's just, it started as bookstore but online, and then it moved to retail store but online. That's not a huge leap anyway. But he has other people who engineer all the technology that makes it run smoothly, all the logistics that make it run smoothly. He doesn't do any of that stuff himself. Same thing with Zuckerberg. He may have done the code at the beginning of Facebook, but I seriously doubt he spends any considerable amount of time innovating things on his own anymore. He has other people do it. He pays other people to do it. So the idea that you have to have this huge profit motive. I mean, I just don't think it plays out. All right, missing some other comments, so let's go back and take a look. Empathy lady. Capitalism impedes science and medicine, as researchers say that they would like to research more obscure things or diseases that have fewer sufferers, but they can't because the capitalist system won't fund it if it doesn't pay. That's absolutely true. Thank you for that. That's another good example. What the profit motive does is it's also the reverse. It's saying that if something is not profitable, you're not going to pursue it at all, really. Because why would you? Why would you throw money from your company away on stuff that's never going to turn you a profit? But there may be very important things that are not exactly profitable. Reducing ocean plastic. That's never going to be a profitable thing, but it's something that needs to happen. It's a really bad thing that is taking place. Same thing with ocean acidification. Same thing with global warming altogether. It's not really profitable to not sell people things, right? And that's more than anything what we need to bring our carbon emissions back under control is to just emit less. You can do some things, like you can package things as green and energy saving and stuff like that, but overall, if you're not using less resources, just trying to consume your way to sustainability probably isn't going to work out in the end. And it's always going to be more profitable to push costs onto the people at large. It's always going to be more profitable as a coal mine operator to just dump your tailings into the river, to remove an entire mountaintop, mar the landscape for forever, if that's the most profitable way to extract coal. So yeah, there's plenty of things that are not profitable that are absolutely necessary for humans to survive, really. So yeah, that was a good point. And hello to you as well, Tumnol Thrall. How are you doing tonight? So Bree, you say you think we should have Medicare for all? I agree with that. Any sort of universal health care would be absolutely amazing. Well, the thing of that is, if we get universal health care, if we get to the point where we're more or less doing away with the private system, that also would mean that a lot of jobs would be gone as well. That would mean that insurance is basically redundant. You're never having to worry about insurance anymore because everyone just has coverage, right? It's a single payer system. So suddenly hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people would be out of work if there was no longer private insurance. So, I mean, capitalism has an incentive to keep this terrible system going because it keeps jobs, it keeps the profit flowing. And of course, all of those jobs produce value for the owners of these private insurance companies. So they want to have these people making money for them. So they want to keep the system going as well. Capitalism, for all of its talk of being super efficient and just the best way to decide allocation of resources, oftentimes it's the opposite. There would be a lot less need for all this wasteful bureaucracy if it wasn't for the private system. Let's see what else you got. So Bree says, I can see that. I actually have a friend who suffers from a rare genetic disorder that causes his body not to be able to fully absorb stuff like phosphorus, and causes severe vitamin deficiency. Oh, that's terrible. I'm sorry to hear that. It causes him immense physical pain. But the only treatment for it costs $200,000 a year. Oh my. That's just criminal. That the people have to pay to keep themselves alive that way. So he's screwed if he loses health insurance. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my wife was in a similar situation recently with her old health insurance. She was not able to afford her inhalers. Um, they would be I think it was like 200 a month for one, and maybe 400 a month for the other. Just some outrageous amount, especially when it's a drug that's been around for decades. I think it was just the normal not albuterol. I don't remember what it was, but it was the basic asthma medication. There's no reason for it to cost as much as they were charging. Now, luckily, she's got new insurance, and it's much more reasonable. It's more like $30 a month for each of them. Um, uh, so yeah, that it has produced a very inefficient system for the consumer when they have to choose paying more money than they can ever really hope to afford, or having bad effects on their health. You know, uh, and it's a vicious cycle too. Like with the asthma inhaler, it was harder for us to go on long walks and stuff like that. Um, and that has a bad effect on the health as well, which makes you need more of the inhaler that you can't afford, and it just goes in a bad direction. And that's the case with a lot of medication. So yeah, so autumnal thrall says it also needs to be remembered that Medicare for all is still a half measure. That's true. That's true. Medicare is still for profit. Okay. A properly funded national health service or some sort would be better. Well, yeah, we need to get profit out of all things that people need for their lives. Decommodify everything. Decommodify housing, food, medicine, transportation, all of this stuff. There's no reason people should be making money off of people just trying to live. You should never have to pay more than you can afford for your life. All right, let's continue on in the chapter here. Probably going to get 2 chapters done. We're going through this pretty quickly.
So, which is very sad. The workers know the shoe pinches somewhere. They know they toil hard all their lives, and that they just get enough to exist on, and sometimes not even enough. They see that their employers can ride about in fine automobiles and live in the greatest luxury, with wives decked out in expensive clothes and diamonds, while the worker's wife can hardly afford a new calico dress. So the workers seek to improve their condition by trying to get better wages. It is the same as if I woke up at night in my house and found a burglar had collected all my things and is about to get away with them. Suppose that instead of stopping him, I should say, "Please, Mr. Burglar, leave me at least one suit of clothes so I can have something to put on," and then thank him if he gives me back 1/10 of the things that he has stolen from me. But I'm getting ahead of my story. We shall return to the...
That's a good analogy, and that's not so far removed from what happens at your job. You are told you need to be thankful for getting whatever wage you get. That if you ask for more, uh, then you're somehow not grateful to be employed, to be able to have the life you have. Um, and the same thing is well, not quite the same thing, but a very similar thing is taking place. The owner, just by virtue of them owning, is taking most of the money that you generate for them through your own efforts for whatever purpose they feel like, and giving you only a little bit back. So yeah, good analogy.
worker and see how he tries to improve his condition and how little he succeeds. Just now I want to tell you why the worker does not take the burglar by the neck and kick him out. That is, why he begs the capitalist for a little more bread or wages, and why he does not throw him off his back altogether. It is because the worker, like the rest of the world, has been made to believe that everything is all right, and must remain as it is, and that if a few things are not quite as they should be, it is because people are bad, and
Hmm.
everything will right itself in the end anyhow.
Doesn't that sound similar to the arguments that so many rich people, especially, but capitalists in general, make about poor people, and the reason for it, that they're poor because of their own decisions, or you rise and fall based on your own decisions in life. Everyone has choices to make, all this stuff. Um, and it's not actually very true. You may have a few choices, but that largely depends on where you start from. Uh, so the idea that people just naturally rise or fall based on something essential about them uh, just doesn't hold up to scrutiny, because the biggest predictor of where you end up in life is where you start, more than anything. You know, starting off in a better footing gives you better education, better access to contacts that you'll need for business, uh, the right skills to get by in work and succeed. Um, but also, it gives you a stable home life that's not going to interfere with uh, any of your future abilities to make choices. Um, so, yeah, let's keep going.
Just see if that is not true of yourself. At home, when you were a child, and when you asked so many questions, you were told, "It is right so," that "it must be so," that "God made it so," and that
Yeah, that's very funny. Bruce says, yes, you can totally be rich like those billionaires if you tighten your belt and stop eating avocado toast. Ah, yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sick of that sort of advice. You know, just eat less, eat less avocado toast. Don't go to Starbucks. Make your own coffee at home. All these things that uh, generally older generations believe that you need to do in order to get by, and in part because that was more true when it was their day. You know, they could walk into any factory with just a college, or not even a college diploma, but a high school diploma, and get a job that they could raise a family on. Uh, they could pay for college just by having a part-time job, or maybe even just a summer job. You know, not work even during the school year, just have a summer job, pay for college. So they don't really have a lot of reference to the way things are right now. Yeah, bootstraps. Yeah. That's funny that actually that phrase "raise yourself up by your bootstraps" that started as a joke. Literally, was a joke, because the idea that you can it's like the cartoon thing that you can like hold onto your shoelaces and just lift your bottom half up, and that magically you'll be supported in the air just because you're lifting yourself up. That was the joke of lift yourself up by your bootstraps. So kind of ironic that it's used in the opposite way right now. Hello, Strin. I think it's been a while since I've seen you, so welcome back. We're talking about communist anarchism tonight with Alexander Berkman. I sold my bootstraps for avocado toast. That's funny. All right.
everything was all right. And you believed your father and mother, just as they had believed their fathers and mothers, and that is why you now think just as your grandfather did. Later in school, you were told the same things. You were taught that God had made the world, and all is well, that there must be rich and poor, that you should respect the rich and be content with your lot. You were told that your country stands for justice, and that you must obey the law. The teacher, the priest, and the preacher all impressed it upon you that your life is ordained by God, and that His will be done. And when you saw a poor man dragged off to prison, they told you that he was bad because he had stolen something, and that it was a great crime. But neither at home, nor in school, nor anywhere else were you ever told that it is a crime for the rich man to steal the product of the worker's labor, or that the capitalists are rich because they have possessed themselves of the wealth which labor created. No, you were never told that, nor did anyone else ever hear it in school or church. How can you then expect the workers to know it? On the con
No, not at all, straight. Uh, yeah, I understand people have things come up, and I am definitely not the only streamer in the world, but I'm just happy to see you back. Good to have you back. Um, so yeah, so he was talking again about how we have this mythical idea that if someone steals something, it's because they're a bad person. Uh, but if we push on that just a little bit, most of the time, the vast majority of the time, crimes are caused not by bad people, but bad circumstances. It is people that are pushed into lives of crime because they don't have great options. Their options may just be either, doing something that they may even not be comfortable with ethically, or working a job that they'll never get anywhere at, and will never be enough to even pay the bills. So no wonder people get into lives of crime. Um, it's an economic decision first and foremost. All right, let's just finish off this chapter for tonight. Maybe we'll even do 3 chapters. We'll see how fast this goes. But
contrary, your mind, when you were a child, and later on too, has been stuffed so full of false ideas that when you hear the plain truth, you wonder if it is really possible.
yeah,
Perhaps you can see now why the workers
that's
do
right.
not
That's
understand
very
that
true.
the wealth that they have created has been stolen from them and is being stolen every day. But the law, you ask,
And this can be a difficult concept because he keeps talking about how the wealth has been stolen by your employer. He keeps trying to drive that point home, and that may seem strange to someone who's never considered uh, why some things are legal and some things are not, and what that means. That perhaps there's something beyond just being legal or illegal, and perhaps the people that make things legal or illegal or have the greatest influence on that have an interest in making the things that they do legal and the things that other people want to do illegal. It's a very abstract way of putting it, but like we'll just take capitalism itself. Capitalists have a pretty strong interest in making this sort of a situation where they control basically all the cards, and they can use that point to leverage money out of their workers for their own enrichment. They have a vested interest in keeping that system legal, and so they continue to lobby for more and more favors. Um, they were the ones who set up these governments in the first place, uh, especially in the U.S. The Revolutionary War was mostly pushed by landowners. I mean, that's the reason that in the beginning it was only white male landowners that could vote, because they were setting up a system for themselves. And little by little, that some of that power has been pried away from them. But the core idea is still there. That this system is to benefit owners and to keep everybody else in line. So so think about that. Uh, just because something is legal does not mean that it's right. Just because something is right doesn't mean that it's legal. Uh, it just happens to be that the system was set up by people that have an interest in stacking the deck for themselves. Uh, so that's why it can be a strange, kind of abrasive thing, like a difficult term to wrap your head around if you've never really considered, you know, uh, why a law is what it is. So taking it back to the employer-employee relationship, if your employer legally can take the product of your labor for themselves, uh, as long as they give you whatever they've agreed to in wages. That doesn't legitimate it. That doesn't make it a legitimate thing to do. That doesn't make it a just or fair thing to do. It just makes it a legal thing that they can do. But it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to even accept a system that allows private ownership at all. We could remake all the laws to move away from that, even little by little. Even if we were to say, businesses of a certain size have to be collectivized and turned into worker-owned and directed cooperatives. That would be a big start in the right direction to align the law with ethics, with justice. That would be a big step. Because right now, as things stand, it may be legal to have private ownership, but again, that doesn't make it right. Yeah, we being society as a whole. Yeah, definitely. Let's see. I feel like I missed something there. I'm not sure who you were talking about there. You're talking about former convict? Oh, here we go. So you say your boyfriend is a former convict, and he was arrested for selling marijuana a few years ago to make money for his rent, like it was just weed. Yeah, and a former convict, he did 6 months in jail for weed, which is a far more benign drug than even alcohol. But again, why are those laws in place to punish people for drug crimes? It's to target populations that the people that are owners don't like. The poor, minorities, and political leftists. All those people, and this has come out in I believe congressional hearings, that the reason that things like marijuana were made so they were put so high up on the drug offense list, why they were treated so harshly, was to target dissidents of the Vietnam War and people of color. And that's the same reason that crack cocaine was treated more harshly than powder cocaine, is because rich people like their powder cocaine and they didn't want to risk as much by doing it. So yeah, and there's a perfect example. Just because it is legal doesn't mean that it's right. So they can legally be throwing people in jail. They can legally be taking away their rights. In a lot of states, it's you go into jail for a felony, which a lot of drug charges are a felony. You lose your right to vote. Maybe while you're just in jail or prison, I should say. Maybe forever. And this is part of the systematic disenfranchisement of anyone that would oppose the ruling class, basically. Let's see. Somebody says, "Yep, I'm a transgender white girl, and my boyfriend is biracial, half white and half black. And I don't know, you're a weird couple. How was you laughing? Oh, that's great that you getting along and doing well in your relationship. I'm happy for you." Yeah, nothing weird about any of that. It should be as normal as any relationship, and really it should be about how healthy the relationship is, rather than any other, whether it's normal or not. That's not the metric that we should use at all. All right, let's continue on.
The government Does it permit such a robbery? Is not such
Yeah.
theft forbidden by law?
Nope.
This has been a production of
that
Audible
was kind of
Anarchism.
a
You can find more Audible Anarchists
quick
on YouTube.
transition. So yeah, that wasn't very long at all. We were only about halfway in, so we'll keep going.
This audio production was made in collaboration with Audible Anarchism.
So this is chapter 3 now, law and government.
Chapter 3 Law and Government. Yes, you're right. The law forbids theft. If I should steal something from you, you can call a policeman and have me arrested. The law will punish the thief, and the government will return to you the stolen property, if possible.
I mean, that's kind of a farce, and I'm sure it was even then. But yeah, for a recent example, just last night, my wife and I drove our car to the local park, and we walked around for about 20 minutes. And when we got back to the car, we found that the front passenger side window had been smashed in, and it doesn't look like they stole anything, because we couldn't. I mean, we didn't even have anything valuable in the car. It's really unclear why they did it at all. But the upshot is that were we to make a police report, for one thing, we couldn't even call a non-emergency line to make a report, because they just don't do that anymore. They will not show up and document crime like that, property crime. We would have to submit it online, and then of course nothing's going to happen from it. But the same would be true of virtually anything that was stolen from us. The police might make a list of it, and if it happens to turn up, if they happen to raid a place and find it, well, then we might get it back. But it's not as though there are police out there right now who are being put on the case of the stolen purse or whatever. They're not going to go track down. They just don't do that, at least not for poor people. For rich people, maybe. If it's an item of particular value, then sure, yeah. If it's expensive enough, they might put on a citywide search for something like that. But it again just goes to show who the system works for, first and foremost. It works for the people with money and the people with power. So yeah. That it was. I mean, it was more annoying to me that had happened to my car than anything, because we weren't in any danger or anything, and nothing was really taken from us. But it's going to cost like $400 to replace the window, and it's not as though we just had $400 lying around to put to that. So we're having to, we had to borrow money, and we're going to have to end up paying it back. And it's just more annoying than anything. So, yeah. Anyway, let's keep moving though.
Because the law forbids stealing. It says that no one has the right to take anything from you without your consent.
Yeah, the law says that. They just don't always enforce that.
Takes from you what you produce. The whole wealth produced by labor is taken by the capitalists and kept from them as their property.
Very true, Natalie. Love is love.
The law says that your employer does not steal anything from you, because it is done with your consent.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have agreed to work for your boss for a certain pay.
So this is an important realm of theory to understand. That always is the retort of the capitalist. Well, you can just get a different job, or you agreed to work for these wages, so whatever you get, that's what you deserve. And people like ANCAPs and right libertarians especially are allergic to thinking of that through any more than just that. Just leave it at, well, you have a right to make a contract with anybody that you so please. And so if you get a terrible deal in the contract, well, that's your own fault. But you have to consider what the alternatives are. And if there's no acceptable alternative, then it's not so much a choice as you're being coerced into it. So we saw this especially with the recent pandemic, the ongoing pandemic. But when they were still when they still had generous unemployment benefits, look at all the employers that would grumble endlessly about, oh, no one wants to work anymore. No one wants to work anymore. They need to kick people off the unemployment benefits so that they'll be forced to go back to work. Okay, so they gave away their hand right there. They gave away the game right there. That it's before no one had the choice to stay at home because there were not these benefits in place. So they couldn't really choose. The most they could choose was which master to serve. But by and large, they couldn't just choose to stay at home. And with the unemployment benefits, they now actually had a choice. They could pick and choose which place they wanted to work for, in a much bigger way than they used to be able to, or choose to stay out of the employment pool altogether. There was a meaningful alternative. But if that meaningful alternative isn't in place, then the proposition becomes work or starve, and that alone is pretty nakedly coercion. Work for one of these people. You get to choose which one, but if you don't pick any of them, then you will starve. Um, Seems pretty coercive to me. Seems as though you're not really given much of a choice under capitalism. At least if you are a worker. If you are an employer, you have tons of choices. The world is open to you. So Natalie says, a worker will never get what they are worth. Will never get what they are worth without or when working for a capitalist employer. In your opinion, yeah, I totally agree with that. You can't. Again, just like how as a landlord, you have to rent out each property for more than you pay for the mortgage. As an employer, you have to hire people for less money than it costs you, or excuse me, for less money than they are bringing in. They have to bring in more money than it costs you to employ them. Otherwise, you wouldn't get any sort of profit for yourself. That right there is that's it. That's where value comes from, is from the employees doing the work, and that's where it goes to, is the employer. So yeah, it's impossible to get what you're worth, because that would, in the minds of the capitalist owners, that would defeat the purpose of having workers at all. Let alone the fact that they're making your business run. Literally, you wouldn't have a business without them. But in their minds, there has to be some gain for them to employ you at all, and not just the idea that your company can do more. It has to be monetary gain for them personally, or else they would not employ you.
He has a right to have all that you produce because you consented to it. The law says that he does not steal anything from you. But did you really consent?
No, it's consent
When
under
the highwayman
duress,
holds
which
a gun
makes
to
it
your
not
head, You
consent.
turn your valuables over to him. You consent, all right,
Mm-hmm.
but you do so because you cannot help yourself, because you are compelled by his gun. Are you not compelled to work for an employer? Your need compels you, just as the highwayman's gun. You must live, and so must your wife and children. You can't work for yourself. Under the capitalist industrial system, you must work for an employer. The factories, machinery, and tools belong to the employing class, so you must hire yourself out to that class in order to work and live. Whatever you work at, whoever your employer may be, it always comes to the same. You must work for him. You can't help yourself. You are compelled. In this way, the whole working class is compelled to work for the capitalist class. In this manner, the workers are compelled to give up all the wealth they produce. The employers keep that wealth as their profit, while the worker gets only a wage, just enough to live on, so he can go on producing more wealth for his employer. Is that not cheating? Robbery? The law says it is a free agreement. Just as well might the highwayman say that you agreed to give up your valuables. The only difference is that while the highwayman's way is called stealing and robbery, and forbidden by law, while the capitalist way is called business, industry, profit-making, and is protected by law. But whether it is done in the highwayman's way or in the capitalist's way, you know that you are robbed. The whole capitalist system rests on such robbery. The whole system of law and government upholds and justifies this robbery. That's the order of things called capitalism, and law and government are there to protect the order of things. Do you wonder that the capitalist and employer and those who profit by this order of things are strong for law and order? But where do you come in?
So there may be there's a term that you may have heard of before, or a phrase that anarchists like to repeat, and that's that profit is theft. And that's essentially what it means. It's that even though it's technically legal for an employer to take anything that they haven't promised you in wages, any money that you generate, as long as they haven't promised you that money in wages, they can take all of it. But in a more objective sense, that is no different than a theft. So yeah. So that's if you hear someone saying profit is theft, that's what they're referring to. The idea that the employers in a capitalist system can just take what they want, because because they are legally allowed to do so.
What benefit have you from this kind of law and order? Don't you see that this law and order only robs you, fools you, and just enslaves you? Enslave me, you wonder? Why, I am a free citizen. Are you free? Really? Free to do what? To live as you please? To do what you please? Let's see. How do you live? What does your freedom amount to? You depend on your employer for your wages or your salary, don't you? And your wages determine your way of living, don't they? The conditions of your life, even what you eat and drink, where you go and with whom you associate, all of it depends on your wages. No, you are not a free man. You are dependent on your employer and on your wages. You're really a wage slave. The whole working class under the capitalist system is dependent upon the capitalist class. The workers are wage slaves. So what becomes of your freedom? What can you do with it? Can you do more with it than your wages permit? Can't you see that your wage, your salary or income, is all the freedom that you have? Your freedom, your liberty, don't go a step further than the wages you get. The freedom that is given to you on paper, that is written down in law books and constitutions, does not do you a bit of good. Such freedom only means that you have the right to do a certain thing, but it doesn't mean that you can do it. To be able to do it, you must have the chance, the opportunity. You have a right to eat 3 fine meals a day, but if you don't have the means, the opportunity to get those meals, then what good is that right to you? So freedom really means the opportunity to satisfy your needs and wants. If your freedom does not give you that opportunity, then it does you no good. Real freedom means opportunity and well-being. If it does not mean that, it means nothing. You see then?
That's very well said. I like the way he puts it there. freedom is not just I can do whatever I feel like. It is not just legally. There are no barriers to me doing what I want. Uh, as he says, all of that is meaningless if you don't actually have the means to do it. You know, I am free to travel the world. Uh, there are probably very few countries that I would not be allowed into as an American. In fact, I don't know that there are any that I wouldn't be allowed into. Um, I am free to, buy a sports car and drive it down the highway within legal speed limits. Other than that, there's nothing impeding me legally from doing that. But what good does all of that do for me if I don't have the money to take a trip around the world or buy a sports car? Not that I would personally want a sports car, but if I wanted to, um, it would be meaningless. You know. Uh, there was a phrase that I can't remember who said it. Maybe I'll look that up in a second here. But uh, you know what? In fact, I'm going to look it up right now so I don't get it wrong. Let's see now. Find it. Okay, so Anatole France said, he was a French poet, journalist, and novelist. Let's see if I can find that quote specifically. Okay, so in its majestic equality, the law forbids rich and poor alike to sleep under bridges, beg in the streets, and steal loaves of bread. Um, so I mean, that's a similar sort of concept. Uh, it restrains people in an equal way. So under the law, people are equal, but in practice, of course, rich people don't care about panhandling or sleeping under bridges or any of that stuff. It only restricts the freedom of the person who has less means. And so likewise, as he was saying, all of these so-called freedoms, like, every conservative ever who just beats the drum of we're free, be happy that you're free, all this stuff. None of that freedom matters if you can't do anything with it. If you don't have the means to start a business, it doesn't matter that you can start a business legally. If you don't have the means to live in your own house, it doesn't matter that you're free to live in your own house. If you are allowed to eat a endless variety of food, that matters not at all if you don't have money to buy an endless variety of food. You are restricted to the food that you can afford. You're restricted to the housing you can afford. You're restricted to the employment that you can afford. And that's another part of it too. A lot of the really well-paying jobs out there require unpaid internships. So on paper, again, anyone is free to apply for an unpaid internship, is free to donate their time for a year or more in order to get a cushy position in the end. But of course, most people don't have the means to support themselves independently while they work an unpaid internship for a year. It's one of the ways that the wealthy filter out lower class people from certain positions, because the people that can afford to do that are being supported by their family, of course. So yeah.
That the whole situation comes to this. Capitalism robs you and makes a wage slave of you. The law upholds and protects that robbery. The government fools you into believing that you are independent and free. In this way, you are fooled and duped every day of your life. But how does it happen that you didn't think of this before? How is it that most people don't see it either? It is because you and everyone else are lied to about this all the time, from your earliest childhood. You are told to be honest while you're being robbed all your life. You are commanded to respect the law while the law protects the capitalist who is robbing you. You are taught that killing is wrong while the government hangs and electrocutes people and slaughters them in war. You are told to obey the government, though law and government stand for robbery and murder. Thus, all through life you are lied to, fooled, and deceived, so though it will be easier to make profits out of you, to exploit you. Because it is not only the employer and the capitalist who make profits out of you. The government, the church, the school, they all live on your labor. You support them all. That is why all of them teach you to be content with your lot and behave yourself. Is it really true that I support them all, you ask in amazement? Let us see. They eat and drink and are clothed, not to speak of the luxuries they enjoy. Do they make those things that they use and consume? Do they do the planting and the sowing and the building and so on? But they pay for those things, your friend objects. Yes, they pay. Suppose a fellow stole $50 from you and then went and bought a suit of clothes for himself. Is that suit by right his? Didn't he pay for it? Well, just so the people who don't produce anything or do no useful work pay for things, their money is the profits they or their parents before them squeezed out of you, out of the workers. Then it is not my boss who supports me, but I him. Of course, he gives you a job, that is, permission to work in the factory or mill, which was not built by him but by other workers like yourself. And for that permission, you help to support him for the rest of your life, or as long as you work for him. You support him so generously that he can afford to live in a mansion in the city and a home in the country, even several of them, and servants to attend to his wants and those of his family, and for the entertainment of his friends, and for horse races and boat races, and for 100 other things. But it is not only to him that you are so generous. Out of your labor, by direct and indirect taxation, are supported the entire government, local, state, and national, the schools and the churches, and all the other institutions whose business it is to protect profits and keep you fooled. You and your fellow workers labor as a whole, support them all. Do you wonder that they are all telling you that everything is all right and that you should be good and keep quiet? It is good for them that you should keep quiet, because they could not keep on duping you and robbing you once you open your eyes and see what's happening to you. That is why they are all strong for this capitalist system, for law and order. But is this system good for you? Do you think it is right and just? If not, then why do you put up with it? Why do you support it? What can I do, you say? I'm only one. Are you really only one? Are you not rather one out of many of thousands? Out of millions?
No.
All of them exploited and enslaved, the same as you are? Only they don't know it. If they knew it, they wouldn't stand for it. That's sure. So the thing to do is to make them know it. Every working man in your city, every toiler in your country, in every country, in the whole world, is exploited and enslaved the same as you are. And not only the working men, the farmers are duped and robbed in the same manner. Just like the working man, the farmer is dependent upon the capitalist class. He toils hard all his life, but most of his labor goes to the trusts and monopolies of the land, which by right is no more theirs than the moon is. The farmer produces the food of the world. He feeds all of us, but before he can get his goods to us, he is made to pay tribute to a class that lives by the work of others, the profit-making capitalist class. The farmer is robbed of the greater part of his product just as the worker is. He is robbed by the landowner and by the mortgage holder, by the steel trust and by the railroad, by the banker, by the commission merchant, the retailer, and a score of other middlemen squeeze their profits out of the farmer before he is allowed to get his food to you. Law and government permit and help this robbery by ruling that the land, which no man created, belongs to the landlord. The railroads, which the workers built, belong to the railroad magnates. The warehouse, grain elevators, and storehouses erected by the workers belong to the capitalist. And all those monopolies and capitalists have a right to get profits from the farmer for using the railroads and other facilities before he can get his food to you. You can see then how the farmer is being robbed by big capital and business, and how the law helps in that robbery, just as with the working man. But it is not only the worker and the farmer who are exploited and forced to give up a greater part of their product to the capitalists, to those who have monopolized the land, the railroads, the factories, the machinery, and all natural resources. The entire country, the whole world, is made to pay tribute to the kings of finance and industry. The small businessman depends on the wholesaler on the manufacturer on the trust magnates of his industry, and all of them on the money lords and the banks for their credit. The big bankers and financiers can put any man out of business just by withdrawing their credit from him. They do so whenever they want to squeeze anyone out of business. The businessman is entirely at their mercy if he does not play their game as they want it to suit their interests.
Well, that's a good point too, Natalie. Healthcare insurance with a premium discount tied to employer is another way to keep employees from looking elsewhere or take on self-employment that they would prefer to do. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Then you have to worry about even if you go to another place and say that you're lucky enough to find a place where they will give you healthcare immediately, which is also not common, at least in the U.S. Usually, you have to be employed for a certain number of days or months to be eligible for healthcare. But even if that was not the case, you'd have to find a place that had at least as good of healthcare, and you would have to say that you liked your doctor. Remember that phrase, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Well, if you change jobs, that's often not the case, because chances are that unless there's only one healthcare provider in the entire region, there's a good chance that if you switch jobs, you're going to switch healthcare providers entirely, and then your current doctor would be completely out of network. It's ridiculous that phrase ever caught on in a meaningful way. That it was ever used against the idea of having a single payer system, because in our current system you often can't keep your doctor even if you like one. But beyond that, if healthcare were just single payer, there would then be no out of network. It would all be in network. You would never have to worry about that again. You certainly wouldn't have to worry that, like, if something catastrophic happened to you, that you'd be taken to the wrong emergency room and end up paying, being stuck with a bill that you can never pay off the rest of your life. All of these facets of the private healthcare industry are meant to tie you to where you're at and make you think twice before changing employers, or striking out on your own, for that matter. Very difficult, much more expensive to get healthcare on your own, being a self-employed person. Very good point, Natalie.
interests, then they simply drive him out of the game. Thus, the whole of mankind is dependent upon and enslaved by just a handful of men who have monopolized almost the entire wealth of the world, but who have themselves never created anything. But those men work hard, you say. Well, some of them don't work at all. Some of them are just idlers, whose businesses are managed by others. Some of them do work, but what kind of work do they do? Do they produce anything, as the worker and farmer do? No, they produce nothing. Though they may work, they work to rob people.
Right, and of course, that's not always true. There are many employers who actually do the work of it, especially when you are looking at, say, a small business owner. A lot of times, even if you have employees, you are doing the work yourself as well, because that's just what you need to do to make the business work. So, just say like a pizzeria or something like that. You'll see the owner in there making the food, as well as the employees also make the food. But again, they make a much larger cut of what is produced in revenue just because they are the owner. So the part that he's talking about now, that they are still working to rob you, that can still be the case, even if they are working hard, even if they are producing things. So just thought I'd point that out.
To get profits out of them. Does their work benefit you? The highwayman also works hard.
Yeah, and that's true as well, Wasted Youth. Small businesses often do really exploit their workers too. And it's just one of those things where they've been used as such a political football for so long. As think of the poor small businessman, think of the honest, hardworking, local business owner. All of these things. When the uprisings were happening in Minneapolis and St. Paul, there was the constant call from the right. Oh, what about the small business owners whose livelihoods you're destroying and all that stuff? They hold this venerated position in capitalist societies, but yeah, we're all like family here. That's something that they use a lot in order to guilt people into working for less money, or work off the clock, or any number of things. But there's nothing about being a small business owner that also says you have to be ethical towards your employees. There's no law that says that. So just because you're a small business owner, just because you are working very hard, that doesn't mean that you aren't also screwing over your workers in order to enrich yourself. So I think that's something that has to kind of change, is our conception of here's a ham for Christmas, or here's a pizza party. These sorts of things, these small social gestures that gloss over the fact that you were being fleeced by your own employer. We're on vacation for 2 weeks. Please do all the work and work weekends to keep up with orders. Yeah. Just because you're a small business owner does not mean you don't also exploit your workers. And that's why it's important to conceptualize things more so than when we're looking at class, more so than looking at things of lower, middle, and upper class, just a facet of how much you are making. It's much more important to look at things in terms of working class and owner class, because when push comes to shove, those small business owners will almost always take the side of large business owners and other owners and landlords and so forth. They will make a pact with one another because they both have a vested interest in keeping the capitalist system going, so that they can line their own pockets at the expense of workers. Whether that's on a small scale or a large scale, their class interests are the same. So for me, that's why it's much more important when you're looking at things from a class analysis lens, to look at things in terms of owners and workers first and foremost. So Wasted Youth says, we have I have worked for a small business many times, and they fucked you over. Yeah, and I've experienced the same thing. I my worst boss that I ever had was when I worked at a Dairy Queen franchise, and the owner of the franchise, uh, his goal was basically to squeeze as much money out of the business as possible, and he would pop in once or twice a week. Uh, and I mean, the other part of why he was the worst boss is because you never knew which face you were going to get. He was either going to ream you out for every little infraction, or he was going to say, "Oh, that's okay. I see you spilled some over there. Oh, I see your ice cream cone is a little bit larger than it's supposed to be. That's okay. Just do it better next time." So there was that, but then there was also he was almost never in the store, and when he was in the store, he might work for 20 minutes or more, but then he would just take off and go. Um, but yeah, he was really good about doing things like, oh, yeah, we're gonna group you for manager. You're gonna be the manager soon. Just keep putting in your time, and then that time just never would come. Um, or he would ask you to come in on the weekends when you said you specifically didn't want to work weekends. All these sorts of things. So just because it was and this was a very small Dairy Queen too. It didn't even have the full service. You couldn't do like the chicken strips or anything like that. The only food that we sold was either the nasty hot dogs on the rollers, which, by the way, never ever eat a Dairy Queen hot dog. They're absolutely disgusting, and they do sit in their own juice all day long. Uh, so just so you know. And then there was this other thing, this shredded pork sandwich, which we literally just warmed up in the microwave. But just because it was a small business and he was a small business owner did not mean that he was, this kind and benevolent pillar of the community and, upholding his workers and their rights and all this stuff. It's the opposite. Yeah. So yeah, good point. We should stop just venerating people just because they're small business owners. And we should start thinking more about different business configurations, such as a worker-owned and directed cooperative, and start venerating those things more. Because those things are much more inherently fair and egalitarian. So Natalie says, I think most of any size business likes to exercise control through the order of control, be it a shift supervisor or the boss above them. Oh yeah, and they would, they will do whatever they can to indoctrinate those shift supervisors or managers to be like company people, so that they will work long hours, come down hard on anyone who steps out of line, all for still terrible pay and benefits. But yeah, they push really hard. Oh, you've eaten the DQ hot dogs. They are disgusting. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I still remember just at the end of the day, taking up the rollers and just the slime of the hot dog juices just rolling down the front of it. It was disgusting. That was a terrible job. I'm glad I only did that for one summer. Never ever go back there again. Although Orange Julius, it was Dairy Queen Orange Julius. I have to say the Orange Julius side was a lot better. Like, it was higher quality ingredients. It was actual real fruit juice and stuff like that. But that's beside the point anyway. The point is this owner was not a great person and did whatever they could to squeeze whatever they could out of their workers. So just because they're a small business person doesn't mean they're a good person. Moving on.
And takes great risks to boot. His work, like the capitalists, gives employment to lawyers, jailers, and hosts of other retainers, all of whom your toil supports.
Hmm.
It seems ridiculous that the whole world should slave.
Oh, and that brings up something that I had heard about Jeff Bezos saying recently when he went on his space flight. He the first one they did, I should say, and he let it slip just a little bit, let that mask slip when he thanked all of his employees for paying for his trip. He didn't say for making it possible. He didn't say for working so hard and making this dream come true. He said for paying for it, which they literally did. I seriously doubt Jeff Bezos has spent any time at all inside one of his warehouses, um, or fulfillment centers, or anything. I'm sure he's never set foot inside a delivery vehicle of any kind. He does precisely zero of the work that makes him so rich. But yeah, just remember that though. If you see your boss in a new car, remember that you literally paid for that car. Your efforts literally paid for that car. Just as if you are a renter, your rent literally pays for the landlord to have that property, and also to have an income besides, above and beyond what it takes to maintain the property. So, yeah, just it's usually conceived of the other way around, that if you work hard, then you get to have all of these wonderful things. You'll work your way up, and then you deserve all these nice rewards. But the rewards literally come from the bottom and move up. Oh, you saw a nice Bezos meme about that. Yeah. Yep. All right. Let's continue.
Slave for the benefit of a handful of monopolists, and that all should have to depend upon them for their right and opportunity to live. But the fact is just that. And it is all the more ridiculous when you consider that the workers and farmers, who alone create all wealth, should be the most dependent and the poorest of all the other classes in society. It is really monstrous, and it is very sad. Surely your common sense must tell you that such a situation is nothing short of madness.
Yeah, and so if you ever have the misfortune of having to debate or have a long discussion with an ANCAP or a right libertarian, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Let's continue on, and I'll see if I can
If the great
get my
masses
thought
of people,
back together.
the millions throughout the world, could see how they are fooled, exploited, and enslaved as you see it now, would they stand for such goings on? Surely they would not. The capitalists know they wouldn't. That is why they need a government to legalize their methods of robbery, to protect the capitalist system. And that is why the government needs laws, police and soldiers, courts and prisons to protect capitalism. But who are the police and soldiers who protect the capitalists against you, against the people? If they were capitalists themselves, then it would stand to reason they would want to protect their wealth that they have stolen, and why they would try to keep up, even by force, the system that gives them the privilege of robbing people. But the police and the soldiers, the defenders of law and order, are not of the capitalist class. They are men from the ranks of the poor people, poor men who pay to protect the very capitalist system that keeps them poor. It is unbelievable, is it not? Yet it is true. It comes down to this. Some of the slaves protect their masters in keeping them, and the rest of people in slavery. In the same way Great Britain, for instance, keeps the Hindus in India in subjection by...
This is true, and that there's probably no more indoctrinated I don't know if class is even the right term for it, but there's no more indoctrinated group of people than police officers, and I'm talking about law enforcement at all levels, but specifically police officers who really believe that they are doing the work of fighting evil and beating back the darkness and all of this stuff. When it doesn't take that much observation to see that the police are there for the protection of the wealthy from the poor, and any other sort of crime prevention or justice that they happen to enact is just a byproduct of their main function. But they believe that they're just doing justice or upholding the law or any of these things. To the point where they will take vigilante comic book heroes as their own avatars, like how they always have the Punisher symbol, even though the Punisher was a vigilante who killed cops. But it just kind of shows you their mentality that they believe that they're somehow superheroes, that they believe so much in justice and fairness and what is right, that they would even go above and beyond what the law allows in order to achieve that goal. Like I think that's the reason that they end up adopting these sorts of excuse me, there's a car honking outside. But that's why they adopt these sorts of symbols, is because they are so down that rabbit hole of indoctrination that they're saying that even if the law didn't allow it, they would still fight for justice and against evil and all this stuff. But it's little wonder, because they are the tools of the hands-on tools of preserving the system as it is. When there's any sort of social unrest, they are there to protect the rich people first and foremost. They like nothing more than to beat up people that they consider not worthy of protection, which is people that are not owners, people that are workers.
By a police force of the natives, of the Hindus themselves, or as Belgium does with the black men in the Congo, or as any government does with a subjugated people. It is the same system. Here is what it amounts to. Capitalism robs and exploits the whole of the people. The laws legalize and uphold this capitalist robbery. The government uses one part of the people to aid and protect the capitalists in robbing the whole of the people. The entire thing is kept up by educating the people to believe that capitalism is right and that the law is just and that the government must be obeyed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see through this game now?
I should hope so. That's the end of that chapter.
This has been a production of Audible
I don't think I'm going to do another one tonight.
Anarchist. You can find more Audible.
But yeah, check out Audible Anarchist. Really great service. I'm feeling pretty tired tonight, so I don't think I'm going to do anything more. And I have a very early day tomorrow because I have to go get that window fixed in my car, which means I have to go. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a lot of fighting traffic early in the morning. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I really appreciate that. I really have liked your questions and commentary going through these couple of chapters here tonight. And I hope you'll join me next week at the same time, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, when we'll be getting into now chapter 4 will be the next one. And then also, aside from my theory streams, I also do streams on Sundays, which are a little bit more open-ended. I think this Sunday I'm going to be returning to the permaculture theme, and I do have a guest scheduled who is going to be talking about ecological villages from a native perspective, and also some other permaculture topics. So that should be a really good time. A lot of interesting things I'm sure we're going to talk about. So I hope to see you for that. And that'll be Sunday, probably around like 5 or 6 Central Time. I haven't nailed down the time exactly yet, but I'll let you know ahead of time. And then I'm going to put in one more plug for the award show that my Facebook group, Left Signal Boost, is putting together. The voting for it is open right now for the 2nd annual Lefties Awards, which celebrates arts, culture, and entertainment from leftists across all the various social media platforms, all the various art mediums. And you can vote right now for your favorites. You go to bit.ly/2ND Lefties. So that's 7 Lefties. So if you go there, you can go ahead. You can vote for the best leftist content from the past year, and then we're going to have an award show day after Thanksgiving on Black Friday right here, and it should be a lot of fun. All the people that have been nominated, regardless of how this voting turns out, will get a small clip in the award show to showcase their work. So you get to be exposed to all sorts of leftist content that you may not otherwise have come across. And then we'll give out awards to the biggest vote getters. And it's just a custom picture. That's all you get for winning. But it is an award show for the people. All the nominees were submitted by members of Left Signal Boost, and all the voting is done by everybody. So if you just follow this link here, in just a second. So there you go. Go ahead and follow that link right there, and you can get your own ballot and vote for who you want to see. And for every category, we also allow write-ins. So if there's someone that you feel really deserves to be recognized and they haven't been formally put into the voting yet, then that's also your opportunity to bring even more voices and content into the mix. And we will showcase their work as well on award show night. But yeah, thank you all for joining me. If you want me excuse me, getting ahead of myself. So for those of you that are following me on Twitch right now, we will be raiding into another channel in just a couple minutes here. So now is your time to give me a suggestion of who we should raid into. Otherwise, I'll just pick someone. Let's see who is streaming right now. Let's see. Who would be a good one? Looks like non-compete just started. So the Reed Army. Let's see. So I think we'll do the Reed Army, unless anyone else has a suggestion. They are another channel that does a lot of stuff on theory. I don't know which one they're looking at tonight, but it just says they're reading theory. So cool. We'll see what they're up to. Let's see what they're looking at. I'm not sure what they're looking at. I guess it'll be a surprise then. But here you go. Here's the link for those of you. Yeah, okay. We'll do Read Army then. Thanks for the suggestions. I did non-compete just 3 weeks ago maybe. So we'll switch it up a little bit. For those of you who are not joining me on Twitch, here is the link to the Read Army so that you can go check them out on your own time. And for everyone else, we will go ahead and raid in just a second. And please stick with me through the raid. It always helps boost my standing among other leftists if I have more people raiding in. So I do appreciate you sticking with me. Let's see. Just have to pull up my dashboard for a second here. And we'll start the raid. I don't know why it's not. Chat's not working very well. Anyway. All right. Well, have a great night, everybody, and I will see you next time. Enjoy the Read Army.